Hey everyone, Johnny B here with devslopes.com, and we are continuing on our way with our Where's the Food Truck Android app. And in this video we are going to create our new view for the food truck details, as well as, and so that's going to show the details of each food truck as well as the map location, and so that's going to be pretty cool. And we're also going to refactor a little bit and create our data service singleton. All right, so let's start with that. So I'm going to come over here to our project and I'm going to right click on our package and I'm going to say new package and I'm going to call this data. I'm just going to call it data. Okay. And then I'm going to right click on data. I'm going to say new Java class. I'm going to call this data service. Okay. That looks good. Okay. So the idea is that you don't want all of your you don't want to manipulate model inside of your activities where you're creating and managing your UI. Okay, so we're going to create this singleton data service. And so to do that, we're going to say private static data service. And we're going to create an instance. And that instance is of type data service. Okay. And then we're going to need a getter for it. So we can just, I think we can just say right click and say generate a getter for our instance. And there we go. So now we got our instance, and then we're going to need a constructor for it as well. So I'm going to say generate constructor. Whoopsie. And up there, it worked. So we got our constructor. And there we go. So I think we want this actually to be private though. All right, so now we are going to refactor our volley request, and we're going to handle that all right here in our data service. So I'm going to say, make a comment here that says request all the food trucks. Okay, so this is going to be a function that we call from wherever it is that we want to request that data. Okay, so we're going to create a function. It's going to be public, and we are going to return an array list of type food truck. And we're going to call this download all food trucks. Okay, and what are we going to need to pass into it? Well, if we come in and we look over at our main activity, looks like the only thing that we really need to pass into it at this point in time is a context, because our new request queue requires a context. Okay, so we're going to come back over here and we're going to create that. We're going to say context and context, and so now we have that. Alrighty, so we got the beginning of our data service set up. Now we can go ahead and refactor our main activity here that is currently holding our volley request to our API. And so we're going to copy most of this and just go ahead and throw it in the data service, but not all of it. So let's think about what we need to do here. So from our main activity right here, we're going to call this function that we just created. We're going to pass into it our context. But over here in our food truck list activity, we need to start out with a variable for our array list. So we're going to do that. We're going to say private array list, and that is going to be of type food truck. And we're just going to call this trucks. Now, because we are returning an array list of food trucks, we're just going to set this array list of called trucks to the result of whatever that data request returns. Okay, and then all of the recycler view stuff needs to be handled right here. So we're going to go ahead and cut this out, and we're going to create a function here. We're going to just call this public, or this can be private actually, private void set up recycler. And I'm going to paste all of that recycler info, and we're going to set that equal to trucks, which is this variable that we just created. And then everything else we should be able to just copy out or cut out and come over to here to our data service and paste it. And then we'll need to do just a little bit of readjusting. So right here where it is this, it is expecting a context. We can say context. Then we let's save that, and that should work now. What do we got an error here for? So we're missing a return statement, so we need to return our food truck list. All right, so perfect. So now what's happening is we are doing our volley call. We're returning a food truck list, which is returned as part of this download all food trucks function. And so over here in onCreate, we can say trucks is equal to data service dot get instance dot download all food trucks, and that should then that will download all of the food trucks and assign it to our array list of trucks. However, we have a problem, as you might imagine, because when you are downloading stuff from the internet, that is handled asynchronously, and so we don't know exactly when this data will come back. And so what we need to do is we're going to create what are called interfaces that will help us to know when the data is downloaded. So to do that, we're going to just create an interface. So we're going to say public interface. We're going to call this trucks downloaded. And then we're going to create a success boolean. And that is all we need for that. And then so how we use this, we're going to come up here into our onCreate, and we simply say, what do we call it? Trucks downloaded. So we're going to say trucks downloaded is the type, and then we're going to call it listener, and we're going to say new trucks downloaded, and then it fills that out nicely for us. So now what we can do is we can go into our data service API call, and where we want to know when it's finished or not, we can put in this success boolean. All right, so that's pretty cool, but we need to pass in the listener in our function. So over here in our data service, we are also going to pass into our download all food trucks function. We're going to pass in a trucks downloaded intent, and we're going to call that listener. And then right down here after the call is successful, so we know that it has been successful right here, we can get rid of this print, and we can say listener.success, and we can pass in true. So now we know that this this download has been successful. So then back over here in our food trucks list activity, we can say something like if success, then do something. In this case, we are going to set up our recycler. Okay, so we're just going to say set up recycler. So that should do it. We are making an API call. So right here, we also need to add the listener, as we added a new parameter to pass into our download all food trucks function. Okay, so we are we're calling our API call. We are setting the return value, which is an array of food truck objects, to our private array list of food trucks. We're setting that equal to it. And then when it's successful, according to our listener, we are going to go ahead and set up the recycler, which takes that array of trucks and passes it into the food truck adapter, which then handles the setting up of our recycler view. So let's see if this works. I'm going to save it and press play, select our emulator, and fire it up. And looks like we got an error. Let's see what we messed up. Oh, you know what I think it is? I think it's this right here. We didn't actually initialize this at all. This needs to be new array list. There we go. Hopefully that does it. And there we go. So we just refactored. This was all we did. Made it more modular, following the model view controller format better. So now we have our data service localized into its own folder. And one thing that we should do is we should have a constants file for all of our URLs. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to right click on our package, say new package, and I'm going to call this folder constants. And inside of constants, I'm going to right click. Come on, right click. What's going on here? Right click, new Java class, and I'm going to call this constants. And I'm just going to say public final static string, and let's call this get food trucks, and that is going to be equal to our URL that we've been using. That's over here in our data service. So we're just going to copy this. So I'm just going to paste that right here. All right, so there we have it. And then back in our data service, instead of that, we're going to say constants dot get food trucks. Okay, that looks better. All right, let's take a look at our call here. I'm gonna make sure we don't have anything unnecessary. We've gotten rid of all of our print statements. All right, you guys, I think that looks good. All right, so we've gone ahead and refactored that. Now let's go ahead and move on to creating our new activity. And that activity is going to be our food truck detail view. Okay, so over here, I'm gonna right click on activities and say new activity, and let's do an empty activity. And we are going to, actually, you know what? This is going to be our map activity. So I'm going to come here and say, let's go check out our gallery, and the Google Maps activity is the one we want. And press next. I'm going to say food truck detail activity, and that looks good. Finish. All right, so now we're going to be working with the map template. And if we come over here to our layout, we have a activity food trucks detail.xml, and it is a map with a fragment. And coming down here, we have this Google Maps API.xml, and so we need to do a little bit of setup to get it working with us. So we can follow these instructions right here. I'm going to turn on soft wrap. Let's see, where is that? Come up here to help. Soft active editor. Okay, there it is. View, active editor, soft wraps. Okay, so to do, before you run your application, you need a Google Maps API key. To get one, follow this link. All right, so we can do that. Just gonna follow this link. I'm gonna copy it, open up Chrome, and paste it. All right, and we can create a project. Creating, you'll see it spinning right here. And it's going to say enabling API down here. API is enabled, create API key. All right, so there's our API key. Go ahead and copy that, close it, go back to your Android, and drop your key right here. Okay. And then looking back at Chrome, I want to show you something real quick. If you check out your API key, if you click right here and come down here, you're going to see your package name, and it's going to have appended, in our case, activities. And this is going to cause an error that I'm going to show you here in a bit, but I want to leave it here for now so that you can see the error, so that if in the future you run into it, you remember, oh yeah, I need to go and fix this. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Then we'll come back when we run into it. All right, so now we have that fixed. Let's check out our food truck detail activity. And the template went ahead and created some things for us. We have a onMapReady method. We have a Google Map function created for us. All right, so all we're going to do in this video is we're just going to set up the segue or the transition from our food truck list activity, the recycler view, to this map view, and just to make sure it's working. So let's go ahead and do that. Over here in our food trucks list activity, let's create the function that is going to handle the transition to the food truck detail activity. Okay, so what that's going to look like, we're going to create a function. We're going to call it public void, and we're going to say load food truck detail activity. And we're not going to pass anything into it for now. And all we're going to do is going to say intent and call it intent. So this is just loading up getting prepared to transition to the next activity. We're going to say is equal to new intent, and we need to pass in a couple of parameters. We're going to send in our current activity that we're on right now. So we're going to say food truck lists activity dot this. And then we're going to send in, pass in the one that we want to go to, and that is add, that is food truck detail activity dot class. All right, and then all we got to do is say start activity and pass in that intent. Okay, so that function is all set up. So where do we handle the click to get from our recycler view to our food truck detail activity? If you said the food truck adapter, you are correct. So let's go ahead and open that up. And that is here in the onBind view holder is where we are going to put that. And that just looks like this. We're going to say holder dot item view dot set on click listener, and we're going to say new view on click listener goes ahead and auto populates for us. I'll update that later, and then all we got to do is call that function. But we got to do one more thing first. We got to create a getter for our food truck list activity. Okay, so up here at the top under our variables, we are going to say private static main or food truck list activity, and we're going to call this food trucks list activity. Then we need to create a setter and a getter. So I'm going to right click and say generate. I'm going to say getter and setter, and what we want to create a getter and setter for is the food truck list activity. I'm going to say OK. And now we have getters and setters. So down here in our onCreate, then we want to set the food truck list activity. So we're going to say food truck list activity dot set food truck list activity, and then we're going to pass in this. All right, so now we have our getter and setter for our food truck list activity, and that's just so that we can go ahead and access this function from our other class, from our where are you, food truck adapter. Okay, so here in our onClick view, we are just going to say food truck list activity dot get food truck list activity, and then we can say dot load food truck detail activity. I made these names all way too long, didn't I? Sorry about that. But that should work. Let's give it a go. So all we're testing here is that when we click on one of the recycler view rows, we segue to the next screen. But remember, I did tell you that we're going to get an error, so I did want to show you that though. All right, so here we are finally. I'm going to click, and as you see, nothing is showing up. And if we look at our Android monitor, it's going to tell us to make sure that Google Maps Android is enabled, that our API keys and everything is set up, and they are. So what's going on? Well, let's go back to Chrome, and for whatever reason, when this service creates our package name, we shouldn't have the additional packages like activities there. So I'm going to delete that, press save, come back to our Android Studio and rerun it. All right, let's give this another go. So I'm going to click, and hey, there we go. All right, so if after you make that change and you're still getting those errors, try restarting your emulator and or give it about 5 minutes to propagate throughout the system. All right, so there we go. We have our recycler view, our list of food trucks, and we now have a map. And so we're cruising along, and that's all we're going to do in this video. In the next video, we're actually going to make it show the correct location on the map and customize up this activity view to display each individual food truck's specific information, as well as start adding our buttons that we're going to use to add reviews, check reviews, and some other cool stuff. All right, so we will see you in the next one.